Hello, oh, wow. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to Ketchup Court. I go by name of Heinz, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man. Thank you so much for tuning in for another case that we are covering. Is in Georgia. It is actually it's the same Georgia that we just came from. You know, last time we were in Liberty County going through all of the Nicholas Casotis trial, but now we are taking a trip to Fulton County to the case of Christopher Wolfenbarger. His name is a mouthful, so I had to take my time with that one. And this case is, in my opinion, very interesting for numerous reasons. For one, it's interesting to me because I've never seen a cold case played out live, or a cold case kind of trial. So essentially, this is kind of a new territory for me, like to analyze and provide commentary on, and immediately I can already see so many things that is just making this trial to be something of an interesting watch. So if for those that don't know much about this particular case, it is a trial that's now being prosecuted when the killing had occurred in 1998. So this happened at Avon Avenue in the state of Georgia, and the investigators did not identify who the killer was. Not who the killer was, who the victim was until 2023. Sorry, not 2023. Sorry, my bad. 2003, where her father had gone to prison, and they basically took her DNA or something like, and from that took his DNA. Sorry, and from that they identified the remains to be Melissa Wolfenbarger, who was the wife of Christopher Wolfenbarger. So that's a little bit of how the body was identified, because she was dismembered, and this trial is just gonna bring out the facts around the gathering of evidence. The family has been on a long campaign to try and find the killer. There is even a website, Justice for Melissa Wolfenbarger. There's been a lot of stories around her, a lot of podcasts around her, quite notably a podcast by Nancy Grace, who has been pretty much been looking into the background of the case. So I'm gonna go into I keep getting it wrong. Christopher Wolfenbarger was arrested on the 6th of August 2024, and it was mainly because new DNA evidence had come to light. Let's go into the background of the case. And thank you so much, all others that are here. Trial Channel, welcome, and Jay Stolly, good to see you back again. Good to see you guys back again. I'm happy to see you guys here. So this is this is probably the best article that I found that went through the background of the case, and it was by the Independent. Let me see if you guys can see that. It essentially says how the capture of a serial killer father led to a breakthrough of his own daughter's separate murder case. So the serial killer's father, the name of him is I believe is Carl Patton. He was responsible for the Clint Rivers murders in the 1970s. And that's how they were even able to, it was through his DNA that they were even able to identify the remains, and Melissa and Melissa was identified through this. So when working on a cold case, there is no guarantee that the murder will be solved, and even if it is, often takes years, even decades. In the case of Atlanta mother Melissa Wolfenbarger, it took 25 years with the help of a podcast, and in a bizarre twist, her serial killer father. Now, loved ones and supporters have traveled to Fulton County Courthouse in August 2024 for the long-awaited trial they hope finally brings justice. Finally, we are starting a trial that we have been waiting for 26 years for. Melissa's sister, Tina Patton, wrote on Facebook this week, adding justice for Melissa Wolfenbarger. The 21-year-old was last heard from her family on Thanksgiving 1998. Her dismembered remains were found 5 months later in close proximity to her husband's place of work. It was 2023. I made that mistake again. Sorry. It was 2003 before the remains were identified as Melissa. Only after her father, Carl Patton, was arrested for a string of unrelated killings from the 1970s known as the Flint River murders. His arrest is finally identified. Is what finally identified her remains. Melissa's mother, Norma Patton, told The Independent, "If he had never been arrested, we might have never known." Melissa's death was not at the hands of our father, who had been cleared in her murder, but what happened to her and the identity of her killer remained a mystery for decades. Melissa's case only began to gain some traction in 2017 when crime scene investigator Cheryl McCallum got her hands on it after the slain woman's mother came to her for help. You can't give up, you just keep going. Talk to anyone who will listen, because you don't know who that person might help, Norma said. That's what Cheryl did for us. She opened the door and helped us walk through it. Melissa's case was the first one to be featured on McCallum's podcast Zone 7 when it launched in February 2023. So you got to imagine, it's now from 2003 to 2023. It's now been 20 years, and this is when the case has finally started moving. In a stunning turn of events, over a year later, in April 2024, a listener who heard the episode reached out to McCallum and shared a crucial bit of information. "I had a gut feeling," McCallum said, recalling the moment she received the tip. She told The Independent that the person had witnessed behavior between the couple, but she could not give further details. McCallum sent the information to the lead detective, and after more than 2 decades of no answers, the case picked up steam and shot through the next few months at lightning speed. 3 months later, in August 2024, Melissa's husband, Christopher Wolfenbarger, was arrested and indicted by a grand jury for her murder. The indictment was for felony murder and murder. I'm not sure if it's malice murder. I'm not too sure, but from what I could find in regards to the charging, is just for the murder. I don't think they're doing the dismembering or anything like that. I don't think that's part of the charges, but I was listening out for all of that today. I didn't hear it, but but I'm going to have to wait until probably the end to 100% know of the actual charges. But he's definitely being charged for murder and felony murder. Let's go back to the reading. It says, "I was just tickled pink. We waited so long for this," Norma told The Independent. "It's been a long, hard road, but it finally happened." Melissa was last heard from Thanksgiving on 1998 when she called her family to make plans for Christmas that year, but she never showed up. There was no phone call, and she never showed up. Norma explained about her daughter missing the holidays. "I immediately panicked, but she was an adult, married with kids, not much we could do. But when my birthday came and with no call, I knew something was wrong," she added. After Norma's missed birthday in February, they drove to Melissa's house in Atlanta from their home in Locust Grove, Georgia. But the Wolfenbarger family was gone. Neighbors told them they had moved away, but their address was unknown. Interesting. The family reported Melissa missing, and authorities tracked down her husband, Christopher Wolfenbarger, to question him. He told police that Melissa had left on her own to pursue her dream of starting a new life in California. The Atlanta Police Department told Dateline this in 2021. On April 29, 1999, a severed human head was found in a black trash bag in close proximity to Wolfenbarger's place of work. At the time, officials misidentified those remains as belonging to another missing person, a man. But then, on June 3rd, 1999, more dismembered human remains were discovered in black trash bags, nearly to where the first remains had been found. A torso was never found. The remains were not identified until 2023. Until 2003, only after Melissa's father, Carl Patton, was arrested in connection to an unrelated murder. DNA testing led to Patton being convicted for the killings of Fred Wyatt and Linda Matthew Evans and Evans' boyfriend Joe Cleveland in Georgia in the 1970s, known as the Flint River murders. He pleaded guilty and was given a life sentence. He was also a suspect in Melissa's murder, but Tina said her father would never hurt Melissa, according to 11 Live. Dad loved us, she said. He was devastated just like us. He broke down and cried. But it was his arrest that led to the answers for the family. My mom was able to convince him to say something about my sister, Tina said to a local outlet. And somebody in Atlanta saw it in the papers and said, wait a minute, there's some remains over here in the morgue, and the address, the vicinities are kind of close to where this girl lived, so let's go get DNA. DNA positively identified the remains as belonging to Melissa and cleared Patton of her murder, but Melissa's killer was still out there, and Norma continued to put all our time and effort in getting justice for her daughter. In 2017, she met McCollum and everything changed. So that's where we're here now. They have been doing a campaign in regards to all of this, and you can go read the rest for yourself, but I thought that was a good background to at least give you an idea of why I believe the prosecutors have an uphill battle. To also give further background into this trial, Christopher Wolfenbarger had applied for 2 bond hearings to be released on bond, but both of them, applied to be released on bond, but both of them were denied, and he's still in custody in Fulton County Jail. So we're now going to go into the trial, and we're now going to look at the opening statements. I will be honest, for some reason the feed is still running, so it's going to mess up my timestamp. It's going to mess up my timestamps a lot. So, but I'm going to do my best to try and get the most accurate timestamps. But anyway, let's go into the opening statements for the prosecution. The prosecution lawyers for this case is Vincent Faucette and I believe Brian Trepanier, and also the defense is Donald Samuels. I don't quite know the name of the other attorney, but all of this info is in the description. But anyway, let's go into the opening statements, because the state was theorizing that Christopher was the one that murdered and dismembered Melissa, his ex-wife. because there was a human head found at a place of work, they theorized also that that Christopher was abusive towards Melissa, and she applied for a protective order against Christopher.
So you're going to hear that Melissa, at the age of 21, she had experiences when she was a child where she would run away from home. She had experiences during her adulthood after she married this defendant, Christopher Wolfenbarger, when she would not talk to her sister for a period of time. But she would always keep in touch with her mother. Most importantly, she never let a holiday go by without calling or visiting. In November of 1998, Melissa had the intent to visit her mother for Thanksgiving. And they spoke. One of the things that Melissa was really looking forward to was getting a photograph of her pawpaw, her grandfather, the father of Carl Patton, Melissa's grandfather, and that is Carl Patton, Melissa's father, and that is the husband of Norma Patton. She wanted that photo, and Norma Patton expected that at some point between Thanksgiving, even though she didn't get an opportunity to go visit her mom, that she would get that photograph. But when Christmas came around, she was concerned that she didn't hear from her. But by the time she got to February, she knew something was wrong. Melissa never would let that much time go without talking to her mom, not especially during that period of time, not on her birthday. Well, it took some time for authorities to be alerted, because you're going to hear that Melissa wasn't reported missing until January of 2000. And that was because this defendant, Christopher Wolfenbarger, you're going to hear from his own words. You're going to hear what he told the detectives, what he told his children. He never looked for her. He never reported her missing. So when Norma Patton and Tina Patton are looking for Melissa, where is she? She's not working anymore. She worked at Waffle House. Not showing up to her job. She's not looking after her children. Not checking on her children. No word. Well, the authorities tell them that, well, Melissa is 21. She's married. She's got her own life. If she hasn't called you, then maybe she doesn't want to talk to you. Her husband hasn't reported her missing. And you hadn't talked to her in a month. Well, not really much for us to do right now. But eventually, Melissa's mother goes to Henry County, and they start an investigation. But even though they talked to friends and family, they even talked to Christopher. And all they get from him is she just left. That's it. That goes on for 3 years. She gets unidentified for 3 years. And that takes us to really when we locate the remains of Melissa Wolfenbarger. They were located on 2 different days. April 29th, June 3rd of 1999. Now, April 29th, George McKeitry is driving on the area and heard questions about Avon Avenue. That location is the location of Action Glass Company. You're going to hear that is the location where Christopher Wolfenbarger works. The glass company, kind of a manufacturing plant. They have industrial equipment at this location. That's where he works. Although they had no reason to think that that was anything significant at the time, because in April 29th of 1999, all they knew was that there was a head in the roadway, partially, fully, pretty much fully decomposed. And Mr. George McEachin is driving in that area on Avon Avenue, and he sees something that he thinks is kind of odd. So he stops and looks at it, goes and gets his daughter, and comes back, and he can see what clearly is a human head. Something that he would tell you he couldn't believe with his own eyes, or what he couldn't believe it. Well, that begins the discovery and really the process of trying to identify that skull. That's those same detective, the lead detective at that time was Kelley. You're going to hear from the Fulton County medical examiners, investigators, Millar. They were all out there at the location on Avon Avenue, April 29, 1999, collecting evidence, taking photographs, some of which you'll see. But ultimately, they start looking for information on who this could belong to. Then you find the extremities on June 3rd, 1999. Now, these extremities are found, everything but the torso, so everything but the midsection of the Melissa Wolfenbarger is located. Fingers, and you'll hear from the detectives, you'll hear from the medical examiners. When the skull was found, they had a portion of the spine attached to the skull, and it appeared as though it had been severed or removed with some type of circular saw. The extremities were examined. Detectives, medical examiners, the anthropologists who worked for the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office, they observed signs of tool marks. The anthropologist describes the different lines on the bones as what happens when a saw is attempting to catch a groove and actually make a cut. You'll see the bones where there's the saw marks on the finger of the Melissa Wolfenbarger. You will see the end of the finger where it appears as though you see ridges on the bone where that saw was cut. But even on June 3rd of 1999, they didn't have these cases connected. They were found about 50, 60 feet from each other in that same area. They didn't have a basis to connect the two, so they were in the medical examiner's office as two separate case files. Skull found on Avon Avenue, and extremities found almost 2 months later on Avon Avenue. It's suspected that the cases may be connected, but they didn't have what you needed to actually combine and connect the cases and say that they were the same person. But what do you do at the beginning of a homicide investigation? The first thing that law enforcement does, especially when there's evidence of foul play, as in this case, when you find out who the victim is, who the person is, you go look at their background. And what did they find when they looked at what Melissa's life was like when she was alive in 97, 98? Who was she talking with? Did she have conflict with them? Is she married? What was her marriage like? Were there instances of abuse in the marriage? had her husband ever been charged with anything related to that abuse, like hitting her. They looked at that information, and I'll tell you that at the time they did find an identity and were able to determine the identity of skull and extremities, Christopher Wolfenbarger was the primary suspect. I'll just tell you that. He was the person, the main person that they were looking at. He wasn't the only person, because you got to conduct a thorough sifting investigation, but they had evidence that Christopher and Melissa were involved in a tumultuous relationship, that Christopher was abusive, that he had struck her on multiple occasions. They had evidence that he had caused a black eye, that she had witnesses that observed bruises on her neck. They had evidence that at some point Melissa applied for a protective order to prevent contact with this defendant. You're also going to hear that on the day that Christopher was ordered to come to court, March 29th, ordered to come to court on July 29th, 1998, you're going to see that same day, Melissa appeared and requested for that case to be dismissed. Roughly 7-8 days after she was hit, 7 days after she went personally and applied for a protective order, 7 days after that, she goes back down to the courthouse and asks for it to be dismissed by the prosecutor. You're going to hear from a lot of witnesses. In this case, we're also going to hear from a domestic violence expert. And that domestic violence expert will be able to explain that that is not uncommon at all. The victims of domestic violence to come back and say, I want to prosecute. And you're going to hear about some of the reasons why that can happen. And that was the 21st of July, 1998. Officer Marlon Sutton responded to the residence at 824 Brookline Street in Atlanta. That was marital residence of Christopher and Melissa Wolfenbarger, the family-owned home of the Wolfenbarger family that Christopher and Melissa were staying in at the time. When Marlon Sutton arrived at that location, it was a response to a domestic violence incident. And when he arrived, he got an opportunity to view Melissa Wolfenbarger, to see her in person. What he observed was someone that had bruises, someone that had been attacked, someone that was hysterical and afraid. He didn't see Christopher there that day, though. He wasn't there, he left. So she was instructed to do as she did. You don't feel safe, go and apply for a protective order, which is what she did very much day. You want to see those documents you last week. The day after this, she goes down and applies for that protective order. And by the time this case comes up, on March 1999, you'll see this document in particular, state court documents, actually filing the formal charge of battery against this defendant, 1998. By the time it comes to the court, they can't find Melissa. Can't find her in March 1999. No way of knowing a month and a half later, her head was found in front of his job. And I'm going to say this too. Less than a minute drive from his house in walking distance. You got this.
So, I'm not gonna play the whole opening argument, but you get the full gist of what they're going to introduce. He did go into to basically say that a bit of our remains was found near Christopher's workplace. So we're gonna hear a lot of testimony, but a lot of testimony in regards to the evidence that was collected. Something that was very interesting to me is the fact that Chris had spoken to the investigators. So this means he did not invoke his rights. I don't know. he did not invoke his rights to basically have an attorney present or anything like that, or not to speak to law enforcement. So most likely we're going to get some form of testimony regarding that. We're going to go into the reason why I say, before I go into the defense closing argument, opening arguments to give my opinion. The reason why I believe the prosecution has an uphill battle is as an uphill battle. Sorry, is the fact that time has changed a lot. Time has changed a lot from 1998, and it's just from in anticipation of a lot of the evidence that they're going to present. I feel like it's going to be very difficult to have everything not only actually been dismembered, and not only as a lot of time passed. It's not like Nicholas Cassodes, where Mindy was found around 5 days after the murder and identified 6 months. This is practically years. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how the prosecution handle this case, how the prosecution present their evidence, and how they persuade the jury to essentially pay attention to that evidence and connect it right back to Christopher Wolfenbarger. So I do think it's great that they have been allowed to discuss the domestic violence. I wouldn't imagine this judge, in my opinion, is great. Her name is Rachel Krause. She was part of the Fannie Willis cases. I think she ordered Fannie Willis to pay $54,000 or something like that. For what because of a violation of the Georgia Act. I didn't follow it, but looking her up, so she is so far, I feel like she is that she's going to run a very fair trial. But the defense, in my opinion, they have a lot easier. They have a lot easier because they don't have to prove anything. They just have to show the limitations that they have, that the state has in putting together their case. At least that's what I believe their strategy is going to be, from what I've seen so far in how they have handled their witnesses. I think that I believe is the defense case to actually lose, just simply because of the time element. That said, though, we have seen cases like, I forgot his name already, but he's an Hollywood actor that was part of the Scientology region. I forgot his name, but he was on trial for rape, that dated back to 2000 or 1999 or something like that, around that time frame. This was so he was still convicted to, I believe, 50 years in prison, and I wish I remember his name, but it was a big story back in 2024 or 2023. But nonetheless, it's not impossible. It's not impossible to get a conviction, but it will be an uphill battle, especially where you are having a dismembered corpse with no torso, in which we are going to hear testimony in how vital it is for a torso to be part of their investigate, to how vital a torso is to basically identifying the victim, and just knowing exactly how the person may have been killed. So anyway, let's go on to the defense opening statements. They were basically theorizing that Christopher had every right to believe that Melissa was leaving him and she was just moving on with her life, so he didn't really think much of it. This defense was to essentially put it out there that the prosecution are trying to tie all this to him circumstantially, because they feel that he was abusive to her, whereas no, he was just letting her live her life because she has always wanted to pursue her dreams, etc. And they also theorized that that the parents who were so concerned about her never reported her missing. So we're gonna hear the full bulk of their testimony right now. Let me try and get the correct timestamp. There we go.
She had her own job.
Just
Released.
go back. So apologies for this. Let me go back a little bit. Oh wait, no, that's too far ahead.
And asked her to 2 cold-blooded murders.
All right, there we go.
Thank you.
Satisfactory.
Thank you. Danny
Melissa's
Masterson.
mother.
Yes, Danny Masterson. Thank you. Yes. So it's not all doom. It's not hopeless, but that was a grape case. This is a murder case. So you can imagine the difficult. Well, I mean, both of them are difficult to prosecute anyway, especially grape. But so, yeah. Anyway.
2 of those murders was a co-defendant. She confessed to planning 2 cold-blooded murders, cleaning up the blood, bleaching the floor, etc. And the murders from which the name that comes to those murders is the Flint River murders, is because one of those bodies was dumped in the Flint River, the other in the Altmoultrie River. And the only reason Norma didn't go to prison like Carl did was because she got immunity to testify against him. And she'll be here to testify this week. The evidence will show that there is also a Patton family associate who also had very strong motives to kill Melissa. We're trying to get him prosecuted for allegedly molesting her in the 90s, and also because his father later turned out, to his knowledge, was one of Carl's victims. And until he learned that, he was a family friend and hung out with the family. And that man's name is Eric Martin Jackson. You'll find out later that at some point Martin learned what Melissa's father had done to his father. And he goes and buys a series of burial plots at a cemetery in 1997, a year before Melissa goes missing, or maybe a year and a half. And he buys them in the very cemetery that Melissa is buried in today, and later he sold those plots to her family. And there are others I'll touch on in just a minute. We expect Norma Patton to come here and testify that she had a loving relationship with Melissa, that Melissa loved her, communicated with her, stayed in touch with her, tried to get away from Christopher's control every chance she could get, so she could come back to Norma's home and see her. But the evidence is going to show that Melissa was actually abused by her mother in her own home for many years and started running away frequently. Her mother locked her in a room all day, every day, from roughly ages 7 to 12. The evidence will show that their home was so foul and dirty that Melissa acquired a foul smell in her clothes and hair that made the other kids at school bully her and tease her. You'll hear evidence from Melissa's next-door neighbor and childhood friend that she will detail the abuse that she endured in that house. Moreover, at some point before Melissa ran away, her sister Tina had a pregnancy in that house, delivered the baby in the house secretly, and tried to dispose of it secretly in a clothes hamper in the house. 13-year-old Melissa discovered that baby's corpse. She eventually told school officials, who later called the police, and it was at that point that Melissa began running away from her home regularly. Christopher, in fact, first met Melissa because she ran away from home. And through a mutual friend, they met at that mutual friend's house. Now, Christopher and Melissa eventually got married, and they did so fairly hurriedly. They were both 17 when they got married. They had 2 children, very young, in very close succession. When Melissa was still pregnant with her second child in 1996, she went to Christopher's mother, Kathy Wolfenbarger, who will testify that Melissa asked her if she would take custody of their children temporarily. And she did. When Melissa got in some legal trouble the next year in Gwinnett County and went on probation for theft, it was after that that they began to, that's when they moved up to Brookline in July of '98. Their children lived with Christopher's mother in Stockbridge and later in Locust Grove, Georgia. When Christopher and Melissa moved up to Brookline in 1998, the children did not go with them. Now, you've heard some talk about an incident that happened in July of 1998 when Melissa took out charges against Christopher. You also heard the state tell you that Melissa came back and dropped the request for that protective order. What they didn't tell you is the very next day, Melissa calls Kathy Wolfenbarger from the Henry County Superior Court and asks her to please come down and sign the papers to make her custody of those children permanent. To make Kathy's custody of Melissa's children permanent. And Melissa permanently relinquishes her parental rights to those children. One of the reasons Melissa originally gave for giving her children over to Kathy Wolfenbarger, and she tells this to Kathy, and she tells this also to Christopher's sister independently, was that she did not want her parents to have anything to do with her children because they are bad people. After relinquishing her parental rights, Melissa quit working around that time at the Waffle House in East Point with her sister. And for some reason begins randomly working at a Waffle House clear up in Doraville. No one knows why she went up there. But according to everyone, no one had any connections up there, friends or family or anything. But she goes up there and starts working. Melissa started spending more and more time in Doraville, days at a time, working double shifts, spending the night at someone's house, and then multiple days, and days turned into weeks, she would be gone from Christopher's house. And it was at that time that she had started seeing Thomas Michael Dixon, the state mentioned a while ago. We'll have a chance to cross-examine him. In October of that year, Melissa got arrested in Gwinnett County for violating her probation, and she spent 30 days in jail until early November. The terms of her probation required her to do community service. This was outstanding from 1997, still in effect. She was to do community service, she was to take GED classes, and she was to report regularly to her probation officer, and she had not done any of that. And so they arrested her, gave her 30 days in jail, and then released her back on the same terms of probation. Within 1 month, she is already violating her probation again. Although she was not rearrested at that time. So at this point in her life, Melissa was spending as much, if not more, time in Doraville as she was in Christopher's house. She only occasionally came back to see Christopher. She had her own job. She had her own money. She had her own circle of friends. She had her own freedom. She had no obligations to her children. And so when in December of 1998, she did not come home for several weeks or months, Christopher could safely assume she had decided to live her own life on her own terms, wherever she decided to live. Moreover, if Christopher had raised a stink about it at the time, Melissa was in violation of her probation. She would have been arrested. Melissa's mother, Norma, is expected to testify variously, as you've already heard, that when she didn't hear from Melissa at Christmas in 1998, that's when she knew something was wrong. Alternatively, however, she will testify that no, it was not until my birthday rolled around. That's when I knew something was wrong. She will tell multiple versions of this story. In one version of the story, well, let me back up. The evidence will show you that in multiple versions of the story, whichever version she tells, she never reports Melissa missing until 2000, January of 2000. If something was wrong in December of 98, something was wrong in February of 99 on her birthday, something is wrong a month later, a month later, a month later, her mother doesn't report it. She doesn't file a missing persons report until 2000. The human remains in this case, as you've heard, were found on Avon Avenue. It's an industrial area near the west end of Atlanta. The evidence will show that it just so happens Melissa's father, Carl Patton, was familiar with this area. He grew up in a childhood home on Main Street in College Park. It's just a few miles down the road. Further, the evidence will show that Norma and Carl actually went up to Brookline Street right after her birthday in February of 1999. They found Christopher's empty house at that time. They learned from a neighbor that Christopher had moved out sometime between Christmas and New Year's. They also learned that from that neighbor that Christopher worked at Action Glass down on Avon Avenue. So they drove down to Avon Avenue and talked to the people at Action Glass. And they learned that he had been let go there. Again, this is February 1999. Carl and Norma Patton knew where Chris worked and where he lived months before the head was found on Avon Avenue, right beside where he worked. The state is correct that Melissa's mother and sister are going to testify against Christopher. They're going to blame him. They're going to call him a domestic abuser. But there's a lot of context you don't know. Keep in mind, as we've already said, the evidence is going to show that Melissa only met Christopher when she ran away from home. The evidence is also going to show you that Norma Patton has consistently, out of her own mouth, stated that she absolutely hates Christopher. From the very first time she ever saw him, she hated him. She worked and did everything in her power possible to prevent Christopher from seeing Melissa. When he was 16, would not let them date, or tried to prevent them from dating. Tried to prevent Melissa from leaving the house. Tried to prevent them from getting married. She tried to force Melissa onto birth control so that she could not get pregnant.
Wow.
Melissa's older sister joined that opposition to Christopher as well. You'll hear it admitted from her own mouth that she did not like Christopher. No one in her family liked Christopher. And that she tried everything she could perpetually to intervene in Christopher and Melissa's marriage to get Melissa to leave Chris. The evidence is going to show that any claims of abuse or bruises on Christopher's part only began to be generated after Melissa started working with Tina at Waffle House. And the evidence of claims of abuse only come from witnesses who came under the influence of Norma and Tina. Christopher and Melissa, as I said, had two children, Chrissy and Joey. Chrissy was born in August of 1995, Joey 11 months later. Again, the state is going to present testimony from Norma and Tina, who will say that Melissa would never under any circumstances have abandoned her children. She would not have just left and never kept contact with her children. Impossible. But we already know that in fact she did legally abandon them. And the evidence will show that she also practically abandoned them.
So a lot of things that I know is I'm like with the prosecution. I'm not going to play the full thing, but a lot of the theory that has been presented is just the motive to lie, on Christopher, to basically paint Christopher as the bad guy and suspect Christopher simply because of the fact that they had an animosity towards him. He does have bad facts to work with in terms of the domestic violence order, but again, it's opening statements. It's nothing. It could change all through trial. Nothing is proved. Nothing can be taken for evidence here. But from what I'm seeing here, they are going to present. They are going to be pretty much aggressive in regarding the family and how they regarded Melissa, that they're gonna show that it's not this loving family that has been created, because they have to look at the likelihood that somebody out there that's local may have heard stories about Christopher and may have already had in their mind that that he is a bad guy. There is a massive bad fact that he has to work around, and that is the fact that Christopher moved away pretty much around the time that she died, and her remains was found in April. That can't be a coincidence. That cannot be a coincidence. Simply, and he didn't spend too much time on that. That's something I noticed. He just said that. He didn't say why he moved away. He didn't say. All he said was, he did say why. It was because he lost his job, so he had to move away, this and that. But he's making it sound coincidental, but at the same time, there is no concrete time frame of when Christopher moved away. So essentially, we don't know whether he moved away in February, March, or December, January. We don't know. So I'm looking forward to hearing that fact come out. But from what I'm seeing of the defense, I believe they're going to rely heavily, and I mean heavily, on time being on their side, because time is on their side. A lot people's memories fade over time. People's memories get worse over time. So I believe he's going to rely a lot on that. I'm gonna go into the witnesses now. We have already seen him do this with Tina Patton, who is the sister of Melissa. When she came on, we are gonna go through a bit of her testimony. Not now though. I'm gonna go through the other witnesses that have been brought on. And before I go through that, something extraordinary happened during the course of this trial, and it was essentially when they were going through the presentation of evidence regarding the police officer that was working with the medical examiners that normally handle missing person cases. They had before the cross examination had begun, the defense received text messages, basically text messages or email, not sure which one, but they essentially received more material from the DA. Now, I don't know much about Fulton County. A lot of you may have heard about it from the YSL trial, because I know that that Fannie Wallace was the one that was dealing with, that was the one. I remember seeing her make an argument of how lyrics could be, that people should not have the privilege of confessing their crimes on lyrics and think that they're gonna get away with it, and she's gonna crack it down or something like that. I remember something like that back. But I also heard around the time that there was a lot of prosecutorial misconduct happening at the time. And when I saw, I'm gonna go and play it. So let me see if I have the right timestamp. I'm gonna go and play it here. Hold up. Let me play it. Hold on. Okay. I think I've got the. I believe it was. Let me go to it. Let me go. One second. My timestamps are messed up, but here, I believe it was. Hold up, let me share it. I believe it was here. Hold up. Bear with me, guys. I apologize for this because they're still live, so I don't have the proper timestamps. But I believe, let me see them make the arguments here. Okay, never mind. But essentially, they had she had received text. The legal team had received messages in regards to receiving more materials for the case, and I thought this is improper because for so many reasons. Because you're supposed to have all of this evidence in trial and automatic, and also not just this wasn't the only occasion. I believe it was under the testimony of Kelley. They were making argument because he had recollections of having more reports that went missing, and there was also recollections about there being a VHS tape that had basically recorded the scene, and there was arguments that it sounded like a Brady violation argument.
Tell the jury not to pay attention to what the witnesses.
Okay, yeah. So this was the. Okay, so this was the argument. Essentially, it sounded like a Brady violation argument, but I don't know because he didn't explicitly state what he was actually going for, whether it was going for a mistrial or anything like that. But essentially, he was arguing that the testimony that Kelley was giving should be basically disregarded by the jury. So I'm gonna go into what they gave testimony around, but I thought I'd go through this event because to me, the prosecution are not off to a good start already. They already have a mountain to climb, but the fact that during trial they are receiving messages, the defense are receiving more material from them. I don't know how that's gonna play out in appellate court if he does get found guilty. I could guess that maybe they can make the argument that it was of non-effect. They have it now, so they can still have time to re-strategize. The material was not exculpatory anyway, or something like that. But it's just, to me, it's just improper from the prosecution to make. So let me go through. Let me go to that cross-examination that they were talking about the VHS.
No. VHS.
You said something about a dog on the scene. Do you have any reason to believe that dog had ever moved the skull at all?
I believe so. I believe the dog drug it out of the woods, and
Or you're just speculating about that?
there was a video, the VHS recording.
Can you stick with the microphone?
There was a VHS recording at one time that showed the dog dragging the bag out of the woods. Now, I don't know where it's
Dragging
at
the
now.
bag with the skull out of the woods?
Yes.
There was no detectives out there until after the skull was already there.
VHS recording. That's a security camera. It's so old. It was
Where is the evidence of that?
I'm sorry.
Has anybody ever had evidence of that? Is that in any police report anywhere?
I don't know.
Are you just kind of making it up today?
No.
I've read every report you've ever written, every report every other detective has
You haven't
written.
written all written. There are reports missing. I don't know why, but there are some reports missing.
Have you told the DAs there are reports missing?
Yeah. But I mean.
Which DA did you tell that there are reports missing?
Gentleman here just questioned me
Uh-huh.
that I had more reports in this file and they're not.
And
Where
where's
to be
where's
found?
where's the VHS?
I don't know.
Did you tell them there was a VHS recording that's missing? You told
Yes.
Mr. Wilson that? When did you tell him that?
The other day when he called me.
You told him the other day?
Sir?
You told him the other day?
Yes.
Is there a
Called
reason
me
you...
last week. Yeah,
And what else did the recording show?
just that.
Did it show how the skull got there at all?
Just what I described.
A dog pulling it out of the woods. Where from what part of the woods? Well, it's not in your report, you know that.
I'm telling you, I have reports missing out of this file. This is not my whole file.
Take your time.
So yeah, so okay, so I went ahead of myself, but I wanted to show this piece simply because I can understand why he didn't want to explicitly say that he's going for a mistrial, because I think deep down he knows that this is something that it can be easily cured by just continuing the cross examination, or getting the jury to basically disregard it, which eventually happened. He did petition to the judge to get the jury to disregard what has been testified to here, and that was essentially it. But this witness, he goes by the name of Dale Kelley. He is a retired police officer. He was part of the investigation team that was on the scene on that day, and this is why. And his testimony already was it was really difficult, because he gave testimony in regards to where the skull was located. He also says that the skull was decomposed, so they could not even determine the sex of the person, if it was a male or female, how long it had been out there. It was very decomposed essentially. So they did not even find a torso, and he also testified in regards to what could destroy DNA, and he gave testimony to bleach. Now, it was a confusing testimony, because even I at the time thought, did the person that did the killer pour bleach into the bag to just destroy the DNA? The manner in which this question was asked was just, it was weird to me, and I could see why it would leave a lot of confusion, but that was cleared up on cross examination. But the main reason why I wanted to go to this is because if the prosecution didn't have a mountain to climb already, because of technology, because of just this length of time, people's memories, all of those things, you now have to the jury hearing this testimony about there being a dog on the scene, missing videotapes, missing reports. Yeah, sure, you can instruct them to disregard it. fair. That can always happen, but these are humans. Like, once that bell has been rung, can they unhear it? Can they actually unhear it and continue to be unbiased?
Is from the wooded area where we returned with the cadaver dogs. It was coming from that area where the other bodily parts were found in the woods.
What did the dog look like?
Like it was a stray dog. The hair was all matted and nasty looking.
Was there any dog hair found on the skull?
I don't know.
Was there any testing done of the skull to show that a dog had moved it?
I don't know how you do that because it was remember the black plastic bag? It was ripped open. The dog was toting the bag and it fell out.
I mean, just the fact that he said, I don't know how you can do that, you can already tell the age. You can already tell the age showing, because at the end of the day, these are people that were not trained to do testings like as advanced as what the defense is asking for here. And it's a very good question to ask. It's a very good, was testing done to ascertain whether the dog's hair was on the skull? And he's like, I don't even know if we did that. I just know that there was that based on what we found, there was not a likelihood of dog hair. So in today's day and age, they would have been testing. I mean, that's what I'm guessing. That's what I believe would have happened. And if that was the case, to basically try and differentiate from human hair to dog hair. But that's my guess. I don't know if they had that much. You also gotta bring in the fact of, remember the OJ trial? They didn't even have DNA testing back then. It was a fairly new thing that was brought in. I think it was brought in 2 years prior, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't 2 years. No. They were. I'm trying to remember my timeline. I think DNA testing was being trialed around, I think it was the 90s or something, or 80s or 90s. But the point I'm trying to make, the overarching point I'm trying to make, it was still a fairly new concept. So this new way of differentiating between human DNA based on hair and dog DNA, etc. Even the testing that we have regarding, maggots and the life of maggots and all that, you cannot imagine that being available back then. So him giving answers like this, remember, it was only the testimony about seeing the dog appear, the VHS and the missing report. That's the only thing that's stricken out. These parts of the cross examination remain.
And you saw a video of that?
Yes.
What did you do with the video?
It was put in evidence.
I think we need to take a break and talk to the district attorney's office for a moment here.
Okay.
Okay, so he saw a video and it was put into evidence. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of his cross to see how the defense basically cleaned up, continue cleaning up what he was testifying to on direct. But before we do that, I just want to, let's just continue.
That as well. Am I correct that you don't have any independent knowledge that there was bleach in the bags?
Nation.
Something about bleach. Detective Kelley, you mentioned on your direct examination something about bleach, and I want to clarify that as well. Am I correct that you don't have any independent knowledge that there was bleach in the bags? Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. In fact, what you've learned was that the bleach was put on the jawbone and on the skull at the crime lab or at the medical examiner's office, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So there wasn't bleach in the bags. There was decomposition of
Fluid.
flesh and whatever, but there wasn't bleach that was put in the bag,
No.
correct?
Yes, there's an understanding between me and somebody else.
Speak up a little bit for these old ears.
Yes, you're correct.
Okay, all right. All right, now, you indicated before that you were missing some police reports, right, or at least one. And during the break, you and I had a quick conversation, right?
Yes, sir.
And the police report that's missing is the one dealing with the second time you all went out to the scene. The first time is in April, the second time is in June. Is that correct?
Well, I was provided more reports that I did not have or was not given to me at this time. And then the one I'm referring to now is 6/3 of 99.
Right, and that one you don't have and nobody has, but you and I discussed it, so it's as good as if we had a police report, right? Okay, so in June you go back out there and you're in the same general vicinity or somewhere out there, is that right?
The wooded area,
Wooded area.
Yeah.
You're not on the road anymore.
no, sir.
And now we have black plastic bags, no bleach or anything, but black plastic bags that have different parts of the skeleton, frankly, right?
Of human remains, yes, sir.
Human remains, okay. And you gathered those up and they all get sent to either the medical examiner or the crime lab, correct?
Well, no, I did not gather them. I did
You were
not
present.
touch. I was present when
Yes.
it was being done. The medical examiner's office was there. They took custody of them immediately.
Right, and they've taken me either to the Fulton medical examiner or eventually the crime lab, or someone we'll be hearing from later on in this trial.
Yeah.
Okay. Now,
He had to. The reason why he just had to clean up a lot of what was presented in the direct exam, especially in regards to the attempt to remove the DNA, and that all the defense wanted to get out of this guy was just the fact that he didn't pour bleach. The other witness that was testifying before Kelley testified was the person to have found the head, and he said, and he goes by the name of Judge McCarran. I'm trying to find his part of the testimony. Let me just look for it so that you can see. He was an old man basically, and he was an old man, Judge McCarran. He just testified because he's the one that called the police. He's also the one that basically just he said he had an experience in the science department or something like that. So he was able to recognize a human head, and he was able to, and he saw it lying on the street. So he thought, take it away and put it in and put it off the street, and basically have custody of it until he transferred it to the police, because he didn't want vehicles to run it over. He also gave testimony in regards to him being asked questions about the head he found, being asked more questions about that, and they just needed to match it up to the other body part. So it was just a technical testimony. My camera is off again. 1 second. So it was just it's really hot here, so it affects my camera really badly. So anyway, apologies for that technical difficulty. So the next witness that gave testimony was Tina Millar, and she was specialized in missing persons. We're not gonna go through her testimony again. It is a very technical testimony. She was the one that found the trash bag that contained the right leg. I believe on the second search, she found this trash bag that contained clothing that was moldy. So the victim had clothes on. She also she believed that it was a female leg, and she also gave testimony in believing that the head was a female head, but it was determined to be a male head. So already all of this testimony, they have to go through it, but this is, again, the limitations showing itself, because they even misidentified along the way. So how can they be 100% sure that they even have the right guy, and do they have anything that could be tying to him? We read that it was DNA evidence, that we went through in the giving the background of the case, that it was DNA evidence that basically brought this in. So we don't know. We don't know who. We don't know whether they are going to present evidence regarding, Christopher being directly tied to Melissa. So it wasn't someone else's head. It was just identified as a male's head. So rather than a female skull, it was identified as a male skull. So that just made their job really difficult. And I'm guessing from their testimony, if they didn't find the other remains, like the leg, for example, they may not have been able to match it at all to Melissa when the father was arrested. So it wasn't someone else's head. She also gave testimony in regards to the skull being so decomposed, and she also said that the skull was she also said that the skull was listed as a white male. Anyway, she also gave testimony in regards to a dog finding and locating the thigh. She says that she believed it was in a bag, not when they found it, but it was in the bag, and an animal had eaten the bag. So that's how the skull basically ended up on the street. The cross-examination was they were mainly focused in regards to the dog remains, in regards to the dog that was found, because it does corroborate, and she didn't say anything about the video, etc., but it does corroborate what the retired police officer Del Kelley was saying in regards to there being a dog on the scene. And she basically gave testimony in regards to a dog finding the bag. But the main witness that I want to focus on is Tina Patton, and she is the sister of the victim. 1 second, let me turn my camera back on. Let me let it cool down for a minute while I do this. Let me let it cool down for a minute. Anyway, so bear with me without a camera. It is very hot here in the UK. So anyway, Tina Patton was basically giving testimony in regards to how Melissa and her were walking at Waffle House, and how there was a confrontation between Christopher and Troy. She didn't really say who Troy was or the relationship with him, but essentially there was an altercation there. She also said that Christopher was staring down at Melissa, like staring at her, I believe it was admiring, but at the same time, it could have been a stare down of control, etc. I didn't really get the idea of what she was going for, but essentially she gave testimony about a domestic abuse that was likely going on with Christopher, essentially. So let's go watch. I think it's
when I worked at that Waffle House with Melissa.
All right. And did you ever see Troy at the Waffle House?
Every day. He worked the same shift that me and Melissa worked, third shift.
Can you tell the jury if Troy ever was at the Waffle House at the same time that Christopher Wolfenbarger was at the Waffle House?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And do you recall a confrontation between Troy McClendon and Christopher Wolfenbarger?
Yes, I do.
Now, without repeating anything that you, that anyone else said during that encounter. Can you tell us what you observed happen?
Melissa was running late this time. She was running late getting there, and I was standing in the back by the office door, just looking out front, watching what was going on, because it wasn't time for me to go out front yet. The manager was counting the money for us to take out, and Melissa came in. She came through the swinging door at the back where I was, and I looked at her, and she had tears in her eyes, and her nose was red, her eyes were red, because that's always how she got when she was crying. We all do when we're crying, and everybody in my family anyway. And I noticed that she had like red marks around her throat, and I said, Melissa, what's wrong with you? What's going on? Wait a minute, is that a handprint around your throat? And she just looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears, and I said, did Chris do that to you? And she just looked at me. She didn't really say nothing. And then I just turned and was going to go out the door. I was going to go say something to Chris.
Okay. Did you?
She wouldn't let me. She stopped me. She said, you'll make it worse.
So that's to aid with the defense, with the state, theory of the case, showing that there was possible domestic violence going on there before she even filed the protective order. She hasn't filed yet. She also gave testimony in regards to another possible suspicion of domestic violence as well. Do
you recall when Melissa left the residence?
No, that's not it.
That's
not it.
Melissa came in, were red, because that's always how she got.
No, that's not it.
And she just looked at me, and her eyes filled with tears. And I said, did Chris do that? And then I just...
I think I've gone too far ahead.
Reserved.
Yes.
And you are not quiet, shy.
Right. No, not at all. I'm
You
pretty
describe yourself
outspoken.
a little bit more rebellious
Yes.
when you were...
So I went too far ahead. So anyway, but the point, let me try and
Waffle House in February of '99. And
that's not it. Okay, that's gone too far ahead again.
So was that it? That was a yes?
yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Do you recall when Melissa left the residence?
Law and crime. This is difficult for me because law and crime still has the stream running, so the broadcast is still going. So I cannot get the proper timestamp because they need to stop the broadcast so that I have the timestamps ready. But it's annoying because all I'm seeing is minus, and I don't know what that means. So and Law and Crime was the only feed that was going after Court TV had basically shut down their feed. Something went wrong over there. So apologies for this, but she did record another where she believed that there was another incident of domestic violence because she actually saw red marks on her neck, and she said again, do not tell Christopher. The defense really highlighted this in their cross-examination because there was possible inconsistencies to what she essentially said contemporaneously to the investigators when they were basically asking her questions around the disappearance of the death of Melissa.
Concerned about Melissa when your father came into the Waffle House in East Point in February of 1999.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So you were working there in that time frame?
At a different Waffle House I was. I was at a different Waffle House when Dad came to see me.
You just testified.
At Waffle House. But it wasn't the same Waffle House we worked at.
Okay, I'm going to go back and ask you again for the record. Do you remember stating on a podcast I didn't get concerned until I was at work one morning at Waffle House in East Point. And here comes my dad walking in the door,
Yeah,
talking about where's your sister?
Yeah.
And that was in February of 1999.
right.
Okay.
What's the question?
Well, I thought you just told me that you were working in a different Waffle House
I
when this
was.
happened.
It was the one in East Point, but that wasn't what you said earlier.
So you were working at the Waffle House in East Point at this time?
Yes,
Okay,
Washington Road.
that was my question.
Like I'm dying over
And
here.
is that where
man.
Melissa came
I'm dying
to
over
see
here.
you?
No,
What Waffle House was that in?
Virginia Avenue,
Okay. And where's the Waffle House in East Point at?
Washington Road.
Washington Road. The one by Spun Divots.
No, that is Virginia Avenue.
So the one thing I know is from this strategy is already they're trying to, what he's trying to do is say, okay, attack the memory first. That's one thing I know is from the defense. Attack the memory, make it seem like she doesn't actually know her stories, and then what he went on doing was talk about not only the custody of the kids and and the giving up of the custody of the kids, because what essentially Tina was, in my opinion, they were making out to be is that they were trying to downplay this custody of the kids, but again, they were trying to show the inconsistencies that she was telling the investigators at the time compared to now, where her stories are changed a lot.
And she was driving the vehicle?
She was driving it.
Do you know who owned that vehicle?
Probably Chris.
Do you remember telling Detective Calhoun that that car was in her name?
There was another car that I think I said was in her name.
Jim has entered the chat.
That's what she told me.
I'm joking.
If I showed you a transcript of that discussion, would you refresh your memory?
I said, I think.
Did you tell Calhoun at that time that you think it's in Chris's name? Or did you tell him that you think it's in Melissa's name?
Well, it says there that I thought it was in Melissa's. So that's probably what I said, but there was another car that was supposed to have been in Melissa's name.
All of this just to build up to this.
You told it a little different than you did the first time. Or at least as you told Detective Calhoun. And I'd like to walk through some of those details.
Okay.
When you testified a while ago, you said that she came back, they came into Waffle House together, is that correct? Mm-hmm. Melissa and Chris?
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Melissa walked to the back with you. And she was in tears.
Yes.
And you noted these handprint marks on her neck.
Right.
And you said to her, did Chris do that to you?
Yeah.
And she didn't say anything.
Right.
And you said you went to go do something and she stopped you?
Yeah.
What were you going to go do?
I was going to confront Chris.
Okay. Do you remember telling Detective Calhoun a different version of that story? Where you asked her, what's wrong with your neck? And she said, Chris tried to choke me.
Probably. I don't remember exactly. That was a long time ago.
But you're testifying under oath here today that she didn't say anything back.
I'm sure when I was walking away, she was trying to stop me, which she would have said something.
But she didn't say anything back when you asked about the neck.
She cried. She didn't have to say anything.
But you told Calhoun that she did respond to you. Correct?
I guess. I mean,
And you said that as you were starting to come out the back, Troy McClendon was coming through.
I'm going
the
to
swinging
explain
doors.
why that's bad for the prosecution's theory. I'm going
To
to
the back.
explain why this whole sequence is horrible for them.
Yeah. And when you talked to Calhoun, you said you were coming outside and Troy was just coming in the front door.
No. That wasn't what I meant. There's one swinging door between the front and the back. You have to go through
So
that.
you're referring to the front as just the restaurant part?
Right.
Okay. And you remember telling Calhoun that when they came in, Chris sat down at the high top.
No, he sat down in a booth.
If I showed you a transcript, would that refresh your recollection?
Is that a yes?
That's when they were coming in the door. Oh, okay. That was when they were coming in the door. When they had come in.
So when they came in, Chris sat down at the high top, correct?
Yes, so.
And for those without Waffle House lingo, the high top is kind of the bar with the tall stools.
Yes.
I don't need to explain that to an Atlanta jury, I'm sure. But then you said when you came out, you talked to Troy, and then Troy went to confront Chris.
Right.
And then he went over and Chris was in a booth by the window.
Right, because he had moved.
And Melissa was in the seat beside him, correct?
No, Melissa was still in the back. Melissa wasn't out front yet.
If I showed you a transcript, would that refresh your recollection?
Other side of the booth. Okay, yeah. From Chris. She was on the opposite side of the table from Chris. Door,
Transport from the back suddenly to the table.
because she went out the back door to go out front. She went the opposite way of where I went. I went straight to the front. She went, there's another door behind the office that goes to the restrooms.
Okay.
So she would have went out that door and went out front trying to beat me to the front. But Troy had stopped me.
And he had to reach across Melissa to slap Chris, is that correct?
He reached across the table to slap Chris.
But he had to reach across Melissa.
I don't remember Melissa sitting on that side. I think it was the other side.
Okay. So you've told different versions of this story, different details as time's
It
gone
was
on,
a
haven't you?
long time ago.
Yeah.
Awful to just get your witness to say that. I mean, this is a great cross examination for the defense. Just to get her to say it was a long time ago, and then you have proof after proof after proof of the memory being defected.
You've also told us this story that Christopher just one day blurted out at Waffle House. He knows how to kill somebody and get away with it.
He did.
And you said you had no idea where that phrase came from.
No.
But didn't you just tell us that Christopher used to work and spend the day on the roofs with your father?
And
And your father was convicted of murders he committed back in 1970s?
so my
And he used-
dad never said anything like that.
How do you know? Were you on the roof with Chris?
My dad would never say anything like that.
I'm asking you, were you on the roof with Chris?
No, I wasn't.
I'm objecting. I believe this is argumentative. Mr. Witness.
It was sustained.
Overruled.
Oh, sorry.
Move on, please.
So, just one more time. You were never on the roof with Chris.
No,
You weren't there when he spent time with your father.
no.
And you don't know what your father might have boasted about.
My dad never boasted about what he did.
Not around you, correct?
They never talked about what he did.
You can only talk about what you know, correct?
I know my dad never talked about what they did.
All right. Excuse me, no further questions.
Thank you.
All right, so the main reason why this was a multiple, like I personally didn't like how he ended it, because he's just mudslinging now. He everyone knows of what is that done. So now the dad was supposedly the one to have told Chris that he could get away with murder because he knows how to commit murder, etc. But I didn't like how that ended. But if I was like my hat does go off to what he had basically done to go through all of the seemingly not so great facts, seemingly not so important facts around the Waffle House, the small inconsistencies that she was told. It was all building up to the moment in regards to the choking that she said that she saw that Chris was choking me. But at the time, contemporaneously, she had told law enforcement that she said Chris was choking me. But now she's saying that she never said anything. Over time, not only has her memories gotten worse, because that happens to every human, you also would have new memories create itself, or whatever. You might have those memories altered. Not only has he shown that that's possible, but it now plants the idea, especially with how they have a domestic violence expert coming in next. They're gonna theorize and they're gonna present testimony in regards to coercive control and how that impacts a relationship, especially in regards to someone wanting to leave. That's my theory anyway. In regards to someone wanting to leave, someone even standing up for themselves, telling others about it. So you can already, in their mind, they had already set up that she's been trying to get the word out about about the death of the sister, that she's been talking about it on podcasts, etc. And every single time, based on what the jury just heard, they would get the impression that she has been basically inventing new facts as it goes along. Not saying that that's what she actually did, just saying that this is what it looks like, what it likely would come across to the jury. And most importantly, when they hear that testimony about how they are not, about how domestic violence victims are not going to say out loud that they are in trouble, that they need help, it gives the impression that she has basically learned that and just started having this new memory that that's what actually happened. And and she believed it all this time. When she told way back then, this is 1999. So way back then, she actually said, no, she actually told me. And not just so not only is the memory faulty, as she admitted and said it's been years, so memory can get bad and you cannot remember. Not only that, it's third party, it's secondhand. It's not direct from the source. So did Melissa even tell her anything about Chris? It just puts a massive dent in the state's case. And I really do believe they have a really big mountain to climb, especially huge mountain. So if they pull off something, I would love to see it play out. These are just my thoughts based on what I've seen on day one. I do think that even though the state came on, they did give a redirect, but it wasn't really that much redeeming because a lot of damage was done. The defense just essentially went ahead with decimating their theory of domestic violence. And the worst part is, especially at that time, they're not going to have pictures. I mean, even now, some people don't even take pictures of their bruises, etc. So definitely in 1998, she's not gonna have pictures of the red markings that she saw. So all you have is just 1 second. So anyway, let me close this off. Apologies again, my camera is overheating. But anyway, like I was saying, all you have is just the witness testimony about what happened that day. And I believe it's just really bad for you to have a contemporaneous report that you have made, and it's just changing over time. For that witness, I hope it doesn't, putting her on this early makes sense. I can see it from the prosecution point of view, putting her on this early, get it out of the way, so that hopefully the jury do not remember too much or lean too much on what she testified, that they could focus on the experts. At least that's what I'm trying to guess, because they're gonna focus a lot on the restraining order, but they still have to get it into the mind of the jury that there was possible violence. The one thing I do think is beneficial here is that he never actually went into much detail about this fight with Troy. You can, the state can easily mitigate this, the fight with Chris and Troy by just bringing Troy onto the stand. If they can track him down, bring him on to basically testify in regards to the fight, and there we go, it happened. But I don't know if that's gonna happen. I don't know their witness list. I would imagine that would be the case. So it's not really a big deal. But if that fight happened, it must have happened for a reason, and they're gonna have cross corroboration somewhere. So it's not a complete disaster. But But looking at how it was just on full display, how much her memory has changed over the years, and even her admitting it, I personally thought it was like it couldn't have gone much worse. But anyway, I'll leave it there. I'm gonna continue covering the case. I do apologize for all the technicals today. I do apologize for for the slow start, etc. But we will definitely get better as the stream go on. I will have to look at the cooling, how to basically take care of my camera so that it doesn't turn off. But yeah, I will definitely look at that. Oh gosh. Again, so sorry, but I'm really happy that you guys are here rocking with me, and giving you giving a chat. I will read some of it out right now. I can't remember last week, much less 27 years ago. The only I remember from 19 is my daughter was born that year. Like everyone's memory is fallible. So I can imagine that being a uphill battle, especially even with the technical witnesses, is going to be a uphill battle to get the most truth out of them, even with reports, because but anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. My camera is refusing to cooperate. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate every one of you for tuning in. Make sure you turn back tomorrow, same time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, 11 p.m. UK time, and we'll be catching up with the Christopher Wolfenbarger. I'll get that last name properly. We'll be catching up with day 2 of Christopher Wolfenbarger Trial. We'll be covering it. As it continues and bringing you the recaps. Take good care, everyone. Have a great day or evening. See you tomorrow. Thanks for rocking with me. Bye for now. See ya. Thank you everyone for tuning in for another Catch Up Court live stream. Make sure that you smash that like button as well as hitting that subscribe button to be notified of our future live streams. We go live regularly, bringing you case updates and recaps of ongoing trials, so make sure you hurry back on the next live stream. We also have more content on the channel that you can binge on. Check out the playlist that we have showcasing all of these contents. Without further, I go by the name of Heinz, your friendly neighborhood ketchup man, and I'll see you back in court.